Shalom, I'm Rabbi Yaakov Spivak, and you are listening and watching Exploring the Torah, in which each week, God willing, we will take a Torah portion and explain it according to the sages of the Jewish people. Parshas Breshis, the Torah portion of Genesis, is the first portion in the Torah, that is the 5 books of Moses. And it begins with the beginning of the creation of the heaven and the earth. The earth was void and empty. So Rashi, the commentator, immediately asks, why do we have to start with that? If the Torah is a guide, if the Torah is trying to tell us how to relate to people, how to bring peace and happiness to the world, and to do justice, and pursue the right thing, what do we have to start with a statement that the world was tohu vavohu, the world was void and empty? Who would need something like that? Why do we have to go through the creation and the stages, talking about esoteric things that are very hard for the human mind to understand in the first place? Why doesn't it start from Exodus, Rashi says, from when the Jewish people were going out of Egypt, and God said to them, HaChodesh hazeh lochem rosh chodeshim, this month is your beginning of months. There, aside from the 3 commandments in Genesis, there we got into the actual Torah laws. So why not start from there, Rashi says. And Rashi gives a very, very good reason. He says it's about the politics of the world. Because one day, the nations of the world will say to the Jewish people, you are thieves because you stole our land. You came out of Egypt and conquered the land of Canaan, which was our land. Sound familiar if you follow the talking and the rantings of the United Nations. And the Jewish people will say, sorry, that's not what happens. God took the land from us and gave it to you, and then he took it and gave it to us. And we have a right to it, because God decides who has the land, aside from the fact that God gives the land to the Jewish people with Abraham, a covenant, a contract, perhaps the first real estate contract. So the Torah must start, the Bible must start from Genesis to tell you that the Jewish people have the land of Israel. And then it goes through with the stories of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And actually there are many opinions that the book of Genesis, the entire book, not just the chapter in Genesis, but the whole 12 Torah portions in Genesis, were written for the nations of the world, not only for the Jews, but for the nations of the world, to teach the nations decency and fineness, and as we say in Yiddish, menschlichkeit, to be fair and honest, upstanding people. And that is what is necessary. And that's why I say that there's another reason that the Torah starts from Genesis. Because the Rambam says, Maimonides says, that if you try to teach the laws of the Torah to someone who never got any training before he came onto those laws, and that person is not a good person, those laws are not going to change him instantly. And he will look at those laws as getting in his way, as barriers to getting the evil things he wants. So Maimonides says, you don't teach this Torah to somebody who's a bad dude. You don't teach this Torah to a person who has bad character traits. You first have to train him. The parents have to train the child. Big lesson for today. The parents have given over the child to the educational system. In the summer, it's camp. Parents take no responsibility for the children. They say, here, you educate them. No. Maimonides says, no. God would not let the world know of all the good commandments in the Torah. The Jewish people would not let them know that until they learn to be decent people, until they learn from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob what it means to be a mensch, what it means to be a decent person. Then you can learn the Torah. That's why it starts with Genesis before it goes into the laws. That's why it talks about how Abraham conducted himself, how Isaac and Jacob conducted themselves. That is so, so important. Especially today, we are in the footsteps of the Messiah. No question about it. The Talmud says that in the footsteps of the Messiah, the world will be filled with chutzpah. Chutzpah means gall, nerve, disrespect, nerviness. The world, says the Talmud, at the time of the end of days, will be loaded with atheism. And there will be no one who will stand up to rebuke people. The world at the time of the end of the days, and the Messiah, says the Talmud, will be where scholarly pursuit and understanding the truth through intellectual endeavors will be odorous and disgusting in the eyes of the masses, who are only there to fill their bellies and satisfy their desires. And also, says the Talmud, at the end of days that we are living in, those who fear sin, the Yirei Achet, those who fear sin, will be rejected from the world. Rejected. Absolutely. And most of all, for ha'emet nederet, truth will be suppressed. Those who are in charge of telling the truth, says the Talmud, will hold it back and produce through a media that which they want the people to hear, not which is true. So it's all the more important in our days, all the more important in these our days, that we, my friends, learn Genesis, Bereshit. Not only the Jewish people, the world. What does God want from man? What does he expect? And when he refines himself and defines himself in a refined manner, then he can enter to study the mitzvot, the laws of the Torah. Then, says the Rambam, Maimonides, and only then. There is a very interesting story in the Garden of Eden. Why put it in? I will explain it. God gives Adam and Eve everything they want. Everything they want. You can have all the wonders of the world. I give you the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, the Ovdol Shomer, so work it, to guard it. You're the man. You're the woman. You're in charge. You're the king and queen of the earth. Only one thing God says I don't want you to do, and that's to touch that tree over there, that Eitz Hadas, that tree of knowledge, or its companion, the tree of life. Don't touch that tree of knowledge. Don't eat from it. He didn't say don't touch it. He said don't eat from it. There's a big difference. Don't eat from it. Stay away from the tree of knowledge. You know what? The nature of man is, when you tell him no, that's what he wants. You can give him everything, but if there's certain things he wants, he's got it, and he's told no, he's got to have it. That's what happened here. That's what happened here. The Torah says, how do you know the story of Haman from the Torah? Haman was the prime minister of Persia, the story of Purim. And he was second in command of the king of Persia. Second most powerful man in the world. He had everything, and the people bowing down to him. But one little Jew, Mordechai, refused to bow down to him. The Talmud says, how do we know Haman from the Torah? And the answer from the Talmud is, from the passage where God asks Adam, Hamin, was it from? Hamin ha'etz, was it from the tree that I told you not to eat from that you ate? So the Talmud wants to compare the name of Haman in Hebrew, Haman, to the word that God said to Adam many 2,000 years before. Hamin, was it from the tree that you ate from? What does one have to do with the other? What is this? Just because the letters are alike, they happen to be alike. No, there's a very, very, very deep, deep understanding in the words Hamin ha'etz. Was it from? This was explained by my Rebbe of all Rebbes, Rabbi Baruch Malakovsky, my high school Rebbe. He said there is a great comparison of Haman to Adam. Both in their own times had power, prestige, everything that you could want. Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and Haman in Persia, in Shushan Abira, the capital of Shushan. Everything. In each case, however, there was only one thing that the two of them could not have. In the case of Adam, there was the tree. Don't eat from the tree of knowledge. And in the case of Haman, there was that Jew Mordechai that wouldn't bow down to him. So Adam could have said, listen, I got everything else in the world. What do I need that tree? Haman could have said, I got no more power in the world. So I'll show that I'm a good sport and a Democrat, and in the sense that I believe in free speech, and I'll let him sit and protest. What difference does it make? And if Adam had done that, ignored the tree, and if Haman had ignored that Mordechai, then they would have both, Adam and Haman, gone on to beautiful lives. But, as it is said in the scripture, Mayim genuvim yimtaku, stolen water is sweeter. And each, Haman and Adam, went after the one thing they couldn't have and were not supposed to have. And instead of living out their lives well, Adam was driven out of the Garden of Eden, and Haman wound up hung on a tree. Listen to the words. Did you eat from that tree? That is the comparison. The same thing in our days. In 1917, 1918, there was the Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I. Germany was totally bankrupt. It had no money. It had nothing. Inflation was to the point that for a housewife to buy a loaf of bread, she had to have a shopping cart full of German marks. It was worthless. Hitler comes along, and forget about what we know what he did later. He improved the economy. He improved the working force. People came by and could go on vacations. It was wonderful. He was an insane genius. The genius part improved the economy. There was one thing, though, and Hitler was powerful as was, one thing he couldn't have. Just like there was one thing that Adam couldn't have, one thing that Haman couldn't have, there was one thing that Hitler couldn't have. And he couldn't have the Jews in the government. He couldn't remove them. He couldn't stand to have them there. But it was a democratic government. It was a democratic government. Hitler is obsessed. He's got to get rid of the Jews. We know what happened. Concentration camps, death camps, gas chambers. But Germany started to lose the war. One of the reasons that Germany started to lose the war was because it was investing its resources into shipping Jews out of the countries all over the world to concentration camps, murdering them. Getting towards the end of the war, 1944 in Hungary, Germany had already had the major defeats in El Alamein in North Africa. had major defeats in Eastern Europe and Russia at Stalingrad. They were beginning to lose the war. Beginning to lose the war. What does Hitler do? He makes sure to send Adolf Eichmann and SS men to Budapest, Hungary, and he's going to ship out Hungary's Jews. People told him, "Mein Führer, what are you doing? The Russians are on the other side of the Carpathian Mountains, and they've got these awesome T-34 tanks. And we have to, they're coming towards, they're going to come eventually to Berlin. And they're going to kill us all. We have to take all of our resources and send them to fight the Russians." Hitler says, "No, the trains are going to Auschwitz. The trains are going to Majdanek. The trains are going to Treblinka. The trains are going to all the concentration camps. That's numero uno. That's number one." You genius, Hitler, but you crazy genius. What did you do this for? You could have ruled the world. You could have been the pre-sin Adam. You could have been the pre-Mordechai Haman. But no, you were obsessed. As Adam was obsessed with the tree, as Haman was obsessed with Mordechai. You became obsessed with the Jews. And in the end, you depleted your resources to the point that you could not win the war. There's a great lesson in this. The lesson that God wants to give the world when he creates it with Adam is, listen, there's so many wonderful things in the world that you can have. So many wonderful things you can have. Don't get hung up. Don't sweat the little things. Don't get hung up on the minutiae. Don't let the tree, not having the tree, bother you. Don't let the Mordechai bother you. Don't let the Jews bother you. Go on with your life. Go on with your life. That's what's important. It didn't happen. There's a very interesting thing here. Rambam Maimonides, in his book, the Moreh Nevuchim, the Guide for the Perplexed, was asked a question. What happened with the sin of the snake? The snake got Eve to tempt Adam to eat from the tree, whatever that means, metaphorically, allegorically, whatever it was, the snake instigated Eve, and Eve caused Adam to eat from the tree. What does that mean? What was it about? Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, and then they had knowledge. Asked the questioner to Maimonides, they were rewarded with knowledge through eating of the tree. That was a sin. Why were they rewarded? Why was it a case, as we say in Hebrew, of chote niskar, of the sinner being rewarded? Why? Why? They were rewarded with intellect and knowledge. They should have been punished right away. Maimonides says that the kind of knowledge that Adam and Eve had from the tree, he answered the questioner, was not intellectual knowledge, because they had to have intellectual knowledge before the sin of the tree, or else they couldn't have communicated. Talking requires intellectual ability. So if that's the case, what kind of knowledge did they acquire? The tree of knowledge of good and bad. Says Maimonides, a very deep thought. The good and bad that is related to concerning the tree of knowledge is not evil and sin or good and a mitzvah. It is what the popular culture calls good and bad. The fads, the gimmicks in life that make things popular, the fleeting fandom of and the whims of the public. That's what the world got. So you know what happens? Like, for instance, in Africa, to be naked in America and walk down the street is terrible. In Africa, in some places, it's not. But that's not a matter of good and bad. It's a matter of what the popular culture thinks of these things, the mores. What does the popular culture think of this? Do you have a car? Oh, or you don't have a car, true or false? But the tree of knowledge was, how nice is your car? Do you think that's nice? Do you have a nicer car than me? Do I have a nicer car than you? Good and bad. That's different from true and false. The world is round, true or false. The world is flat, true or false. Oh, is it a pretty world or is it not a pretty world? That's already getting into popular culture and ideas. If we didn't have that, there wouldn't be any wars. People wouldn't be jealous. People wouldn't want what the other person had. And after the sin of eating from this tree of popular culture knowledge, Adam realized he had lost the olam shel tmimut. He lost the world of simplistic beauty. Look at the words. Look at the words in God's confrontation with Adam. Look at what he says. He says, God went looking for him and says, Ayeko, where are you? As if he didn't know. And Adam says, I'm here. Well, why are you hiding from me was the implication. And Adam says, Va'ira, I was afraid, ki eroma anochi va'echaveh, because I was naked and I hid. God says, ooh, who told you that you were naked? Are you embarrassed about it? Because people don't think it's a good thing? Did you eat from that tree? Did you eat from that tree? Did you spoil this beautiful world of simplicity by everybody is cool and gets along and nobody's jealous of anybody? And eat from that tree where you're always looking to see if the other guy's got more than you? You got to get out of this Garden of Eden because that's not for you. Your nature is, you're made to strive, to struggle. Even a monkey climbing up a tree for the banana feels great for the accomplishment that he had. Man has to accomplish. You cannot put him in a Garden of Eden. You cannot give him everything. It won't work. So the communists of Russia found out. It won't work. That's what Adam and Eve got. Not a reward of intellect, but a burden, a punishment, a burden of being jealous, of comparisons. Last thing I want to talk about is, what was the punishment of the snake? The snake, after all, instigated the whole thing. Adam has a punishment of b'zeit apechatoch alechem. You will work to earn your bread by the sweat of your brow. Eve is told, the best of tell the bunny, you'll struggle to have children when you have children. And the snake, he doesn't have to sweat for his food, it's all around him. Says Rabbi Ruderman, my Rosh Yeshiva, that was the punishment. Because even a simple monkey appreciates struggling to get something. Even someone who, that's why we say a blessing on the bread. God wants us to work for it a little bit and have more satisfaction with it. And that's the beauty of the struggle, of Adam La'amol Yulad, of man born to struggle as the sparks fly up with competition. Success is part of his nature. So God starts the world off saying, you think you want to have it all some days? Here, I'll show you what happens when you have it all. You're not going to be happy. The snake would never have to work. His punishment was, you will crawl on your belly and you'll eat dust, whatever that means, but the point is your food will be around. You're not going to have to go attack and sweat. It'll be around. You'll never, he says to the snake, have the satisfaction of accomplishment. That's what we have. And that's the beauty of life, to accomplish. Ladies and gentlemen, Rabbi Yaakov Spivak We'll give you a Torah portion, God willing, every week. And this comes from my book. It's in Hebrew now, Shalvat Yaakov. And you can get a copy if you want. You can write to us at the email address that you saw. And you can, so while supplies last. And if you want to learn more about our programs at Kol Eshel Avraham, the Eshel Avraham Rabbinical Seminary, Congregation Eshel Avraham, the Outreach Congregation, you contact us at the email address, yspivak@aol.com. It's wonderful to be with you. We look forward to more times together. And until we meet again, Rabbi Yaakov Spivak saying, Seid gesund lehitraot, Shalom al Yisrael. And most of all, my friend, Chazak, be strong.